Hey everyone, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. I've got a great guest for you. His name is Kris Rudeegraap, and Kris is the co-founder and co-CEO of a company called Sendoso.com, and they do gifting, corporate gifting, and how to use gifts as a lead generation mechanism and as a stick mechanism, and how that differentiates you from others in your prospecting efforts. So we're going to talk to Kris just in a moment. Folks, if you're interested in making your unpredictable revenue predictable, or you're interested in making your follow-up personalized, meaningful, and relevant, we have two offerings there. Reach out to us at YouMatter, YOUMATTER, at ceosalesstrategies.com. That is an email address. Reach out to us and we will respond. Just stick in the subject line. I want, unpredictable revenue or predictable revenue, and or want to know more about follow-up, because we have a technology that will do the follow-up for you in a personalized, meaningful, relevant way, and it will do it automated for you so you can automate your follow-up process. All right, let's go talk to Kris right now. Get a pen, get a paper. You're going to like this episode, I promise. Hey, Kris, welcome to the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast. Thanks so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Doug.
So, Kris, why don't you tell everybody what you do and the company, and we'll set the frame for this.
Yeah, so I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Sendoso. We are a corporate gifting and direct mail platform. So we have global fulfillment and warehousing, software that connects to your tech stack, and ultimately we make it easy to build pipeline and close more revenue by sending stuff to people. Could be a bottle of wine, could be swag, could be 10,000 postcards, you name it, we help send it out.
That's pretty awesome. So let's talk a little bit about why does this work? Like, corporate gifts, like in gift sending. Why does corporate gifts or just gift sending, when you're sending this out for lead generation, why does it work?
Yeah, so lots of different reasons. One is because a lot of companies are not doing it, so there's a bit of scarcity. And so you get a gazillion emails and banner ads, but you don't get that many gifts sent to you or direct mailers. And so because of that, they break through the noise more. So I think that's one. There's also some really interesting built-in scarcity controls because of the costs associated with sending stuff out. You end up not spending out as many as you would like emails, which is just practically free. So you inundate your prospects with emails, you don't inundate them with gifts. So that's the first. The second is there's just a lot of psychology and reciprocity associated with receiving something tangible. Opening up a box that's personalized, you feel a bit more compelled to follow up and reply. I don't think most people these days will read an email or see an ad and be like, oh, I didn't click on that ad. Like, shoot, I feel bad, So there's that. And then it just also happens to be another kind of quiver in your tool belt or tool that you can use in conjunction with all the other channels. And so I think if your competitor is using 10 different channels to reach out and you're only using 5, like who's more likely to make it work? So I think it's just the 1-2 punch, I like to call it.
So let's talk about the each. So I got break through the clutter. You're going to have limited gifts, so you kind of focused on your targets versus just blasting out, right?
Yep.
Reciprocity and something else in the quiver, so to speak. All right, so let's talk about breaking through the clutter, because so many people that I talk to are like, I can't figure out how to differentiate myself. I can't figure out why I'm different. Like I'm a real estate agent, or I'm selling corporate business to business, or I'm whatever. And I just seem to be in like a sea of competition, especially after post-pandemic. So I've always taught, Kris, you got to not differentiate, but you got to be different.
Yeah.
And so how does, well, I know, but I want,
Yeah.
how does using gifts as a lead strategy, breaking through the clutter of the day-to-day and getting the attention of somebody?
Yeah, so I think it boils down to the fact that, if you are trying to be creative and spending time, working on lead generation, being creative with sending something will stand out more because people receive less of it. It also works well because you can have a kind of a pre and post follow-up that works really well. Like you send them an email, then you send them a gift, then you call them. And so that like 1, 2, 3 punch, you're hitting them on all the different means because some people might, not look at their inbox that often, or some people might not pick up their phone that often, or some people might not look at their mail as often. But if you're doing all of them, you're much more likely to grab their attention. And then I think the last thing is it's something that you don't get as many of. And so because of that, if I were to look in my mailbox and I have 5 different things, that's a lot less than the, 50 different emails I have. And so you end up being able to have more time because you have less competition there.
So using this type of gift, again, breaking through the clutter, we're not trying to close a sale. We're trying to open a relationship, correct?
Well, I'd say that there's a couple different things you could do. So
Okay.
our clients across the board will use us for what I call like different leaky buckets in their business. So we might have guests listening that says, I have too many leads. I have more leads than I could ever ask for, but the leads that I have don't convert as well, or no one shows up to the meetings that I book, or we it takes way too long to close these leads. And so for a lot of businesses, they'll have their own unique metrics that they're trying to optimize for. The obvious one is getting more leads top of funnel, but you might be, hey, we're only getting 50% of the time people showing up to our meetings. Well, maybe then you send a Starbucks gift card in the morning, reminding them to show up and, buying them a coffee. And we've seen one of our customers do that and increase by 90% their demo show rates. But at the end of the day, you are trying to build a rapport. You are trying to build that relationship, and people buy from people. So anything you do by providing gifts and dimensional mail along the journey is going to help you stand out and build a better relationship.
So the gifts, do they have to be like relevant to the conversation? I mean, if you're gonna have somebody, like you said, they send a coffee gift card, which would make
Yeah.
sense. It's like, hey, I'm buying you coffee this morning. I'll see you at the meeting.
Yeah.
It's not like you're gonna send a bottle of wine or something well, you could, I guess, but
Yeah, you could. I think the way that I think about personalization and relevance is kind of threefold. One, you personalize around the individual. So, hey, Kris likes plants, as you can see my backdrop here.
Mhm.
And so maybe you'd send me a little succulent follow-up and mentioning that, relating the message of the gift note to your business too. You can't just be like, hey, here's a succulent, let's meet. It might be like, hey, are you looking to grow your business? Here's a succulent that you can grow, and let's talk about your growth. And that kind of fun, playful play on words can help break through it. So that's personalizing on the individual. The second thing you can personalize is on the signal. And so the signal being like, why are you reaching out? Is it, hey, Kris just got a promotion. I'm going to send him a bottle of wine or champagne and say, congratulations. And that's relevant. Or, there's a lot of different signals that happen on someone engaging with you or something that happens to them and that you're trying to personalize on. The third is really the action. So, hey, maybe you're trying to get me to go to an exec golf event for a field marketing event. Maybe you send me some personalized golf balls and say, hey, here's some golf balls. Would love to have you come to this event. Similar to the Starbucks card. Hey, would love to see you on this meeting later today. Here's coffee on me. That's related to the action. So personalize on the person, the signal, or the action. And typically that will allow you to have relevance related to why you're reaching out.
Okay. So we want to tie in our gift to the relevance
Yep,
around personalization.
exactly.
So in my case, I'm just going to try this because I might completely blow this out of the water, and you could tell everybody how bad I
For
am at
sure.
this on this podcast. But if I was going to send you a succulent, I would likely send you a the fastest growing, most proliferated succulent on the planet, and tie that into how I can help you with revenue growth in your business.
Exactly. Yep, that's a perfect example.
All right. I didn't embarrass myself on this podcast. That's good. So, so, all right. So, and we all know, like, I mean, I think I deleted probably 22 emails this morning, just going through and going,
Oh yeah,
bip, bip, bip. I didn't even read them because
same.
I can tell by the title, SEO proposal.
Yep.
Like I need another one of those. I've had 62 in the last month. Okay. So, uh, limited gifts that you're well, before we go there, I want to ask you a question. Do some people look at these gifts as a potential, like a bribe? Like, you know what I mean? Like, can they look
Yeah.
at it that way?
For the most part, if you're tying it into the relevance and the message, it's seen as just another, means of communication. Um, if you go over the top and be like, "Hey, here's a $400 bottle of wine," I will, if you don't meet with me, I'm gonna be pissed or something, where you're like feeling like it's like you take this, you get there's some components of that on how you word it. But for the most part, I think people generally see this as just a tactic to get to know somebody. It's like, you know that if someone's inviting you out to lunch, in a business setting, or inviting you to coffee, you're not, oh man, they're gonna bribe me with a coffee to have them talk to me. It's like, no, you're just trying to build the relationship better. And most people, whether you're the buyer or the seller, are trying to build that relationship. And this is another means to get to know somebody and to get to know them better.
And I suspect it's on the size and scope of the deal that we're talking about too. Like if we were trying to close a $50 million deal, let's say, and we knew somebody's favorite bottle of wine and it happened to be, whatever, $500. And
Yeah,
we sent a $500 bottle of wine and it's a $50 million deal. It wouldn't be construed so much as if the deal was, I don't know, 5,000 and we sent a $500 bottle of wine. It would be a little weirder that way.
for sure. And I think it's just more of the context of what you do. If you the bottle of wine example, you might be like, "Hey, thanks so much for your time this afternoon, spending 2 hours on this demo and POC conversation." Like you mentioned you had a dinner party later this week on the call. Well, I wanted to send you my favorite bottle of wine from this winery that's up the road from me. And that feels very natural. You're not like bribing them with wine. You're saying, "This is something that's special to me. I want to give something special to you. I appreciate your time." And you're using it in those regards. So I think there's just the messaging and the wording that helps get this across.
We're speaking with Mr. Kris Rudeegraap. Rudeegraap. I almost got the name the first time.
But you almost got it.
Rudeegraap is the last name, Rudeegraap. He's the co-founder and co-CEO of Sendoso.com, and they're a corporate gifting platform for you folks. And we're talking about how we're utilizing gifts as a door opening strategy, a rapport building strategy, a positioning strategy within our customer journey, and how you can do this with grace and decorum. And, Kris, I wanted to bring this up because I remember, Enterprise Rent-A-Car was one of my clients.
Hmm.
And I invited one of the regional offices out to lunch, and we were going to buy lunch for them. And we met at a restaurant, and they came up to me and they said, "Hey, uh, we can't spend more than $20 per person on lunch." And I was like, "What?" It's like it
Yeah,
was a nice restaurant, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so they had a corporate policy in there where they couldn't accept the gift.
Hmm.
How do we find like how would we know something like this up front? Like if or would we
Yeah.
not?
It's tough to know those things. There's different ways that you can work around that. There's one we have validation rules set up in HubSpot or CRM or Salesforce or whatever CRM you use that allow you to, if you come across that, you can set up some settings to prevent more gifting to those types of companies. The nice thing is we provide that compliance layer so that you don't have like a rogue rep accidentally do it again and get in trouble. So
Yeah.
we can prevent against that information. We also have the ability to ask the recipient if they want to receive the gift and then either confirm their address or trade in the gift or donate it to charity, which is another great way to focus on that offering. We also have companies like that you'll send more compelling, interesting direct mailers, like a mailer that you could create a cool looking box that has a video that plays when you open up the box. And there's no monetary value associated with that. There's also other things that you could do that have no monetary value as well that are creative, like, hey, sending a pizza box empty in the mail. They open it up and there's a little picture that says like hungry for a new solution for your, XYZ. Let's chat. Again, no cost to that, but it's a creative way to get their attention versus sending them maybe a generic email. So I think the goal of our platform is leveraging creativity to break through the noise. In some cases, the gift works well. In some cases, the mailer works well, depending on the scenario. Um, and then there's other ways around it as well, too.
So let's go to the next step then. That I love the word leveraging because that's what we're doing here. We're cutting through the clutter. We're only going to so many clients.
Mm-hmm.
So we're picking the right targets.
Yes.
Right. And a lot of people, when I talk to them on all levels, whether it's on the solo independent business professional or on the CEO of a major company, they're always saying, my people are working too hard. I'm working too hard. And it's like, well, what if we got a little more targeted with what we're doing?
Mm-hmm.
And instead of just trying to create a lead or a marketing qualified lead, we create a sales qualified or sales ready lead. And
Mm-hmm.
when we go after those, we would work a lot easier, close them faster, and have much better conversations during the process. So reciprocity is an interesting concept because we all do reciprocity and we have since we were little children.
Yep.
And so it's kind of a human, not kind of, it is a human trait, maybe even a human need. I'm not sure. I haven't researched that. Why does it work in corporate gifting? Because we know it works in the personalized. I mean, if you
Yeah.
give somebody something, they remember you. And,
Mm-hmm.
why does it work in the corporate side as well?
I mean, at the end of the day, people that work at corporations are people. And I think
True.
that, there's a bit of, I think for a while, some of the tactics or even some of the behavior you like, oh, in your personal world, you do this, but in your business world, you do this. I think those are kind of blending together a bit more, partially because of this remote hybrid world we live in where your worlds are kind of coming together more, depending on what role you do, but also because it's some of the things that happen on the personal side just work well, like gifting or other tactics and strategies. And so that's, being moved into the business landscape. And so I think at the end of the day, if you're good at your job in sales or marketing, you are trying to build relationships with your prospective buyers or your customers, and for the better too, not in a fake way, but genuinely you like are trying to help them solve a problem.
Hmm.
I remember one of our early customers, we like he loved us because we were like, wow, he was in a head of marketing. He was driving so much more pipeline and in an easier fashion through using our platform. He even invited me to his wedding. I went to his wedding because we built a friendship over the course of many years working together. And I think that's the dream state is how are you finding those prospects, turning them into customers, and then being friends? And I
Yep.
know that might sound weird because you're like, oh, I don't want to be friends with a customer or a prospect. That's like I want to be friends with my personal friends. But if you're solving problems for them and they're interesting people, why not? So,
And remember, your business contacts tend to have other business contacts, and your friends
hmm
have other friend
yeah,
contacts. So it is
yeah,
another form of leverage.
hmm
And the gift doesn't have to be expensive anyways, right? I mean, it could
no,
be, I remember a company, they were going to do a kind of a beach. They were going to go to the beach and do like a company outing at the beach.
hmm
So we just sent some beach balls
yeah,
and we
exactly.
said, have a ball at your party.
Yeah. That's all you have to do. It's just the more personal, the more, in that case they knew you were listening, it was relevant and it wasn't like you were sending them something that was crazy expensive. It was just more relevant to the conversation.
So let's talk about the expense because this is it does cost more than sending an email, or it does cost more than getting a LinkedIn navigator,
Yep.
$900 a month type process.
Sure.
But the cutting through the clutter is so much easier when you're using gifting. And I'm supporting this because we've done this, right? I know the
hmm
power of how it works. Um, and I can give, examples. as well as how it's worked for us. And this is why I thought it was so important that you come on and tell the
Yeah.
story, because not many people use this.
No. Well, I think not many people use it either because one, it's without a platform, it tended to be a lot of work. You got to
Mm.
go procure the item. You've got to go to the post office. You've got to, track the tracking link. Maybe you have to expense it or report, track the expense against it. And this is like what I did when I started the company. Prior to starting it, I was doing a lot of gifting and sending out mailers myself, and it was so painfully hard that most of my colleagues didn't do it, but I knew it worked so well that I was going to do it. I ended up realizing that it worked so well that I should build a software platform to automate some of the hard processes. So I think it becomes, in some cases, sellers are lazy, and it's like it's easier to send an email than it is to go find a thoughtful gift, pack it up, write a note, go to the post office, box it, ship it, track it. But when you use a platform like Sendoso, there's little bit more of a compelling reason to just click a button, and there's no excuses on why. You do mention expensive, yes, but I think that's all relevant. The way that I see it, or I've heard some of our customers talk about it, is like, well, if you spend $1 on gifting and it generates $4 in pipeline or $4 in leads, but you spend, $1 on ads and it generates $2. Well, which is it really more expensive or is it actually
No.
cheaper? And so you got to look dollar for dollar. I think another way to look at it, and I think this is the less obvious way to think about it, is, hey, maybe you send a $50 gift and you grab a prospect's attention and book the meeting in 2 weeks instead of lots and lots of emails over the course of 3 months. So what is it worth to have a new customer sign up and paying you revenue like 2.5 months sooner because you broke through that noise quicker? And I think that's where, most people listening would be like, wow, if I could shorten our sales cycle by 2.5 months by spending an extra $50, like, heck yeah, I would do that. But, you've got to be a little bit more thoughtful. So,
We're speaking with Mr. Kris Rudeegraap. Rudeegraap. Ah, I'll get this before the end. See, everybody knows this is live because I screw up the name, right? So,
yeah.
co-founder and co-CEO of Sendoso.com, talking about using gifts and corporate gifting. I want to, because I have done this, Kris, I want to let people know what you're saying is, from my perspective. Firstly, if you don't have a platform, there was no platform when we were doing this back
Yeah,
then, right?
exactly.
So it is a bear to measure, to manage the process and kind of measure its effectiveness. The way you
And
measure it
scale it.
and scale it, yes, because we used to go out and get, go out to like a warehouse toy manufacturer and buy something here, and then go to a wine manufacturer and get it there, and then all of that was like. However, we landed some really huge clients doing this.
Mhm.
And so, folks, what Kris was saying regarding cost to sale, just take a percentage of what does it cost you to generate your sale today. And
Mhm.
I think you're going to find with the gifts, it may be a little more, it may not be, depending on what you're sending. Like, beach balls back then were like less than $1. So it was
Yeah.
like nothing. We
Yeah.
sent something, Kris, called a screaming monkey
Ooh.
to, so you know how with sales teams, they will do something when they close a sale, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Ring a gong
So
or
yeah, ring a gong. I was in a company one time where they had like this rubber chicken, you'd squeeze it and it would scream out, right?
Mhm.
And I got the idea. I'm like, what if we just sent a bunch of screaming monkeys, which are basically a toy that you pull the monkey
Yeah.
basically apart and let it go, and it flies across the room and it
Cool.
makes a screaming sound, right? So every time that they would get a sale, you'd see 15 or 20 screaming monkeys going across the
Oh, that's
cubicles,
awesome.
right? And so it was so inexpensive, right? I
Yeah.
mean, compared, right? And so, when I walked in, the whole sales team knew me, the whole
Yeah.
company, you know what I mean? So it's like, how costly is that compared to trying to do cold traffic,
100%.
right? I mean, it's much more targeted, number one,
Mhm.
and it's way more personal.
Yeah.
And it's much more effective. And like you said, it can actually literally close the time of, from the time of prospect to the time of sale. It shortens up that sales cycle if it's done right. So as folks, you can tell I'm pro on this idea. And one of the reasons I'm pro on this idea is I've actually done it and it works.
Mm-hmm.
And especially if you're trying to get into a very large account or a
Yep.
very competitive account, uh, I had one friend of mine, he created, chapters and sub chapters of a book and sent the
Mhm.
book chapters, and it was a pop-up
Hmm.
type book as he was sending it. And,
Love that.
I mean, that put $500,000 in his pocket.
Yeah.
So,
Thought leadership is a really great strategy for engaging with prospects or even customers for expansion. We've seen companies use books with, in having a highlighted section that we'll do for them or a postcard and referencing, hey, on page 40, they talk about XYZ, thought this was relevant. We even see a resurgence of people sharing like really good blog posts or really good like case studies, printing them up, sending them over in a nice fashion with a nice handwritten note, and using that as part of their strategy, which was a bit obvious and was done 10 years ago. People would always like share out like, hey, here's this like printed white paper we did.
right,
But over the last decade, that's kind of the pendulum shifted so far over to say, here's a link, here's a link, here's a PDF, here's a link,
right.
and people are a bit like have banner ad goggles to that at times where they're like, oh, I've seen so many of these. Now I think it's all about the right combination. You don't want to just stop everything digital, but I think for most companies they've went so far digital that they forgot about this other art form of sending stuff to people, getting on their desks, getting in their offices, getting at their homes. um, and we can help.
Well, I mean, if we think about the psychology behind this, Chris, it's you get sometimes hundreds of electronic messages a week,
Hmm.
if not even more for some
Yeah,
people, right? And how many packages do you get in the mail that you don't pick up or you don't look at, right? I mean, I know my family, when we come home, the Amazons drop two or three things on the
totally.
doorstep, right? And I know my wife is like, oh, I ordered this, and my kids ordered that, or whatever, right? And I'm
Totally.
like, I'm like, oh, all right, every 2 weeks I order something, right? So,
Yeah.
but you pick those packages up and you kind of look forward to opening them. It's not, it's kind of like a gift for a birthday or a gift for Christmas. It feels
Hmm.
somewhat similar.
Yeah.
Um, or if you get some lumpy mail package in your regular mail, you
Yeah.
open the package,
Exactly.
right?
Well, it's funny. One of our sales reps uses the stat that the open rate for a FedEx envelope or package on your doorstep is 100%.
100%. Right.
No one is seeing a FedEx box in their doorstep and being like, I'm just going to throw it in the trash. There's the very, very least, there's curiosity to be like, well, what's in the box?
Yes.
you
Yes.
know? So, which is unique because I think for other channels, people are not like, ooh, what was written in this email that was sent to me? It's like, I'll just swipe it. Or, oh, this number is calling me. Like, I wonder what they're gonna say. You don't have the same curiosity as you do with like what's inside this box sitting in front of me.
That's true. And a lot of times with that phone number, if you don't recognize it, you're like, I'm not picking this up.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And so there's a different positioning. And with that box, you're absolutely right. Now, the thing is, when we look at, marketers, let's say, look at connection rate,
Yep,
direct mail has the highest connection rate out there.
I know.
So because like you're sending a package, they open it, that's a connection,
Yep,
right?
exactly.
So if you're sending a LinkedIn message or you're sending an email or you're sending a text message or whatever, you do have a certain percentage of a connection rate, but it
Mhm.
is much lower than the direct
Yeah.
mail rate.
Well, and I think it's all goes back to you need to get in front of these prospects, dozens of times before they actually see the noise or see between the noise. So you could have a phone call that you mentioned you leave a voicemail and that person listens and they're like, okay, intrigued, but not going to call them back. Maybe they look at an email, they click on a link, they're like, okay, interested, but not ready. And then maybe that direct mail hits and they're like, oh, wow, okay, like you grabbed my attention. This was, I'm gonna, or maybe the direct mailer was looked at and was like, wow, this is really interesting. I'm going to share this with my colleague, share it with the colleague, and then the colleague, then comes in and inbounds and requests a meeting. So there's just, you've got to reach out and engage your prospects with as many channels as possible, as often as possible, because the world we live in is competitive and there's so much noise. And so, if you're just doing email, or you're just doing social, you're missing out on all the other options like direct mail or many others.
Well, and just like in the pandemic, right? Something
Hmm.
comes along and whacks the person. So,
Yeah.
and so, there are regulatory changes that happened in Europe with,
Yeah.
email, right? So w don't folks rely on one channel of contact ever
Hmm.
because
Yes, that's a great way to.
the average company, Kris, I have done this over and over. I don't know how many times, literally thousands of times. This is the data is over tens of thousands of people. The average company uses 1 to 2 channels for prospecting, right?
Yeah.
So the let's wrap up here by talking about follow-up, because I think
Hmm.
sometimes people think, oh, I sent this gift, I didn't hear back from them. Geez, that didn't work. And I'm gonna say this: you have to follow up. You
Yes.
gotta follow up, right? Because the gift is nothing more than a connection point.
Yes.
So,
100%. And it's
right,
just another means to engage, but it's not like a silver bullet that you're like, oh, I just sent them a gift and they're automatically going to reply.
right, right. And in most cases, they won't.
Yeah.
Right. And so, Kris, how many gifts does one have to send? I mean, if you send one gift, it's not like always the one gift works. That's what I've found anyways. Maybe you have it down to a better science than we had. Um, but I find sometimes you got to send 2 or 3 gifts, and then they're like, it goes from like, what the heck's this gift in the mail for me? And to the next thing, like, oh, this guy sent me another gift, to, huh, kind of like this guy. He
Yeah.
sent a few gifts, and then bam, they take the call.
Hmm. Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think it's not a perfect science on how many gifts, depending on, I think the segment, the industry, the contract value. It could be could be a few, could be more.
Yeah.
Um, I think it just all depends, and that's where testing comes in a little bit. That's where automating things come in, and um, I'd say there's probably the bookends. Like you're not if you send someone like 30 gifts over the course of a couple days, they might be like inundated, but who knows? Some people would be like, "Wow, this is awesome. They really want my attention and my business." So,
So I had a friend who wanted to get a hold of, at the time, it was President Clinton, right? And
mhm.
and he kept sending direct mail packages and postcards. He was sending
Yeah.
postcards. They weren't really responding to him, which I would have expected that the president of the United States was not going to respond to him, or his office. And so
Hmm.
he sent 350 postcards in one day.
Whoa, that's aggressive.
They actually responded.
Wow. I
Yeah.
mean, that's good.
They responded saying, please stop doing this, right?
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
but he was so happy he got a response, because that's a
Yeah.
connection, and he looks at
Yeah.
relationships over the long term.
Hmm.
And
Well,
so, with any prospecting channel, remember, it takes time sometimes to get the relationship to go. I mean, it took me 2 years to get in the door with a company called NASCAR,
yeah.
and but it took me 2 years to get NASCAR. But I followed up every month with NASCAR. And so the reason I'm telling people these stories, Kris, is because I don't want them to think that they're just going to take one gift, send out 100 gifts, and 100 people are going to call them right out of it could happen,
Yeah.
but it's about them building a relationship using the gifts
Hmm.
in a way that they can't do with email, or the way they can't do with another method. Now, and as you said, you want to use multiple methods, but that's what I love so much about the gifting process, and the fact that you've made it easy for people to do this
Yeah.
compared to what we did.
Well, the one thing you mentioned too, while the 300 postcards is probably a bit spammy and too much, but even if it was just a few and they got a no, sometimes getting a no sooner is better than chasing somebody that was going to say no in 6 months anyway if you're in sales, and then you can refocus your time on someone who is going to say yes. And
That's
sometimes
true.
your solution is just not the right fit, and breaking through the noise to understand that timing is off or that they already have a solution that they can't, get off of right now. The sooner you can get to the no, the better, so that you can refocus that time on another account that can get to the yes too. So
Yes. And you'll know how to manage no's because no's are sometimes just the beginning of a relationship. As you were
exactly.
saying, it may not be right now, but if you
Yeah,
had to send 3 or 5 postcards and got the same response, at least now they know who he is, and he knows they know
exactly.
who he is. And so now it's a matter of, I'm older, so, I use older analogies, but, Family Matters was a really great comedy show on television. And there was this character, Urkel.
Yep, I
And
remember.
remember Urkel? He was always trying to get Laura to go out with him.
Yeah,
It took him seasons
yeah.
to get Laura to say yes, right? But he never gave up. And the thing is that when you're building a relationship, even a no is a point of a relationship as long as it's not breaking rapport.
Hmm.
So so Kris, any last things that, hey Doug, I wish you had asked this question, or I think people should know this, or did we cover it all?
I think we covered it all. That was a great session. We went deep on a lot of different topics, and shared a lot of interesting wisdom and learnings. So, really happy that I was on and able to share my thoughts and some of the successes we've seen.
I really appreciate you giving the information you have because it's so important for people to understand this. Kris, how do people get a hold of you or know more about this gifting
Yeah.
process?
If you're curious on Sendoso itself, you can go to sendoso.com, sendoso.com. If you want to connect with me directly, add me, follow me on LinkedIn, or shoot me an email. It's Kris, at sendoso.com, and happy to chat more.
And Kris's last name is Rudeegraap.
Boom, nailed it. Fourth
I
time's
got
the
it.
charm.
I got it. And it's spelled Rudeegraap.
Yep.
There's not a lot of Kris Rudeegraaps on LinkedIn, so you can find him very easily. We'll
Yep.
put all the information in the show notes for you folks. And Kris, thanks so much for being here today on the CEO Sales Strategies podcast. I'm really grateful you came and brought your A game.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
All right. So you use gifts for those 4 purposes. One, you break through the clutter. You're creating leverage for yourself, and you are going to be different. People, when they get a gift, it's really cool. They like them, right? Now, again, you don't have to spend a ton of money on gifts. It's just a matter of the right gift and being relevant. As Kris was saying, personalized in the right way, whether on the person, the signal, or the action, and making it relevant. So you are going to only use them for a limited amount of people, depending on your budget, right? Here's the thing. Since I've done this, I know if you get it too wide, like you get, hundreds and hundreds of these things going off, um, it's sometimes harder to manage. Now, with a platform like Kris has, it's way easier. We used to do this without a platform, and it absolutely works. You're building a relationship and you're doing something that's different that makes you stand out amongst the competition as well. Make sure that you are making it personalized, though, and make sure it is something that is relevant to the conversation. And if you don't do that, then it can be a little construed as like, this is off. And it's just like any marketing message. You're pitching sword lessons and they're thinking picket fencing for their yard, right? So um, both are fencing, but the message will be off. Reciprocity is really cool in this because, we have it built into us as human beings. When we get a gift, we naturally want to give a gift back. And the gift that you're looking for is the conversation, to have the conversation with them. And I do agree with Kris. It is another, something to have in your quiver, so to speak. Um, you don't have to just use electronic medium. In fact, not using just electronic medium will allow you to connect with a lot of other people. If you think of this kind of as like a networking meeting, if you go to a networking meeting, you have the person face to face. And when you have that person face to face, you can have that conversation. Why? Because you're there and it's different. than if you were just trying to, cold email somebody or cold LinkedIn them or, reach out. So get out and get FaceTime amongst the people. Using gifting is one way of doing this to get yourself to be able to have more FaceTime. All right. If you love this episode, I'd ask you to please go up and give it a review. I know it takes a moment or two to do so, but I'd be forever grateful if you give it a positive review. If you're interested in our upcoming Make Your Unpredictable Revenue Predictable Academy, so to speak, reach out to us. And if you're looking for our upcoming SaaS offering, which is called Vibitno, Vibitno, that means you matter in a Slavic language. Let us know that as well. You can do that by sending an email to youmatter, Youmatter, because you do matter to us, at ceosalesstrategies.com. Just put in the subject line, predictable revenue, follow-up, or both. And we will reach back out to you and help you to the best of our abilities. Now, when you start corporate gifting, you can start small and work your way up, but look at it as a percentage of the sale and say, if I could get the sale for this percentage, then this is acceptable to me. That's how you know how to set your budgets. All right. This is Doug C. Brown. Until next time, go out and sell something, sell a lot of it, play win, win, win. You win, they win, someone else wins. You make everybody happy, and you'll make way more friends and way more referrals coming out of that. And please don't discount when you don't have to, because when you discount, you've got to sell way more. It's not just one for one. You got to sell way, way more just to make up for the drop on the discount. Until next time, this is Doug C. Brown with the CEO Sales Strategies Podcast saying, to your success.